My name is Kirk Banghart. I'm the Vice President of GSN and also the Chief Facilitator of the Colorado Rural Education Collaborative. The collaborative is 87 school districts across the state of Colorado who've all come together to really solve problems of practice and work together about ways that they can make education better for students here in Colorado. A little bit about my background is that I've been an elementary and middle school teacher, as well as a principal, assistant superintendent, and superintendent before taking on the role of collaborative leader. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Erin, to talk about herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Coker. This is my third year at Generation Schools Network. And before joining GSN, I worked for Denver Public Schools. I had a variety of roles in DPS. I was a teacher, a literacy specialist, a school improvement partner. And so now working for GSN, I have the opportunity to support districts and schools across the state with a variety of different education grants and school improvement work. All right.
Right. Awesome. Well, today I want to talk, we'll talk a little bit about our learning outcomes that we're going to try to hit. First of all, we're going to talk about a little bit about our research behind the coaching model and our impact on student achievement that we're going to talk today. We're going to dive into a little bit about examining a case study that we had from Chinle School District, which is a school district on the Navajo Nation in Arizona that we partnered with last year, and talk a little bit about their results that we had with this model. And then we're going to share a little bit about our tiered coaching approach and the results that happened there in Chinle to maximize the impact and the meaningful change that we saw with this model that we'll do. So hopefully that we're going to show you each of those things as we go through our hour together today. So before we do that, I think one of the things we'd like to do is just kind of go around the room and better understand who we have in the room today. So we'd ask you to as we go around, tell us your name, your district, and the role. And based off of what I talked about, what were you most excited to discuss today as it pertains to your role that you have in your district? So we'll go ahead and go around. If you don't mind, we'll just kind of popcorn. And if people wouldn't mind introducing themselves. And so I'm just going to pick based off of my screen. And so Cindy, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off.
Sure. I am an ELA instructional coach.
Awesome. And Cindy, where are you out of?
I am out of Elk Creek Elementary in Newcastle.
Oh, awesome. Great to meet you.
Thank you.
All right. And then go ahead and jump in, whoever would like to go next.
I can go next because I'm in Garfield RE2 as well. So my name is Lancy Elder. I'm an assistant principal and I love coaching so much. I'm still the math coach for our school because I can't give it up. And then I'm just really excited to learn more about coaching and supporting teachers, especially teachers who haven't been certified in a traditional way.
Awesome. Great.
Maybe we could have one more person come off mute and introduce themselves. Other folks, please feel free to fill up the chat as well. Also, 100% vulnerability here. I realized that I did not update this slide. So if you are confused, we are not here to talk about parent-teacher partnerships. We are here to talk about coaching. So apologies for that oversight on my part.
I can talk. My name is Parker. I'm from North Park School District here in Walden, Colorado. you can see Keely there. She's she works here with me, and we might have our principal joining us. Chrissy as well. We just ended our day, so sorry for the adjustment here, but super excited. I don't quite know what this meeting is going to be about, but I'm excited to learn more from you all.
Wonderful. Thank you. Nice. Well, perfect. We appreciate it. We'll talk a little bit about GSN. On the screen there is a little bit about our mission and vision. I won't bore everybody with that, but it's there for you all to see, so you can take a look at what we're all about with that. But I will go to our next one, which is to talk about best first instruction. One of the things that we like to do is use the Department of Education's definition of best first instruction, because we're going to talk a little bit more about what that is and how we use it. So this is the definition that we use for best first instruction. And so we talk about it as the foundation that requires educators to build meaningful relationships with all students to address individual needs and create relevance by allowing students to see themselves in their learning and provide opportunities for exploration and expression. And so one of the things that I think Erin and I have found as we've done our work across the state and in multiple states is that one of the things that I think we found a lot is that it's almost like the COVID amnesia, is that a lot of the work that we've done is that many educators know great pedagogy, and something happened during COVID. And so a lot of times that great work that we all know as educators got lost. And so sometimes best first instruction is about reminding our educators about the work that they already know how to do. And so it's about bringing it back into their zeitgeist, and it's about having those conversations around what does that look like and bringing that together. And so really it's about things like, there's really kind of 4 areas that we like to talk about, and so those are on the next slide. It's about building relationships, it's about meeting the needs of all students, making sure that we're creating relevancy and fostering disciplinary literacy, and we do that through BFI. And so we're going to talk about that, especially as it comes with relevance about coaching. And so what I want to talk about today is that how we did that in Chinle over the last year. And so in order to do that, we want to talk a little bit about what Chinle Unified School District was like, a little bit about their demographics, because those of us in Colorado may not know Chinle. Chinle is on the Navajo Nation. It's a school district of about 3,200 students. It's a pre-K through 12 district. 98% of the students are of Navajo descent. It serves about 7 schools in multiple communities, including the town of Chinle and the surrounding communities of Many Farms, Saline, Lukachucka, wheat fields, including Cottonwood and Salina. And so those are very remote communities that all come together. The district is definitely minority enrollment, and it's also 33% of the students are economically disadvantaged. In working with the superintendent, one of the things is that almost all of their students travel in on buses. In fact, they travel as many miles per day on the buses as it takes to travel across the United States. And so they do a lot of miles on buses. In fact, their own district owns a major wrecker to try to pull their buses out. In fact, their buses travel almost exclusively on dirt roads. And so I learned more about traveling on really rough dirt roads working with this district than I think I ever thought I would know in the process. So lots of challenging components of working with a remote district, but wonderful folks to work with in their process. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. One of the things that we did in our partnership with Chinle is we did it in a couple different ways. One of the things that we did is we worked with both in-person and virtual PLCs So we did PLCs not only with principals, but with their APs and also instructional coaches. And they participated in shared learning in teams. And then we did that 6 times over the course of the school year. We also did in-school support, and then we followed the virtual learnings and the plannings, and the GSN coaches were on site along with the teams at monthly times to support with planning and implementing the coaching that we'll talk about here a little bit to help support the instructional planning that was going on throughout the processing to do that process. So one of the things that I think was we were really happy about is that we did a survey with the Chinle leaders around cultivating their skills with observation and coaching. And one of the things that we did see was that throughout the process, we asked leaders, did they see a change in their skills? Was it improved, or did they see it excelled? And about 80% of their leaders said that they saw improvements throughout the school year through this process that we're going to talk about. And so we did that. But not only did we see it in self-reflection, but what we were most excited is we saw it in student achievement. And so the numbers I'm going to show you were based off of the student assessments in ELA and math. And so over the 23-24 school year, you can see the comparison scores between Arizona and the Chinle Unified School District. So they were able to close the gap by 9 points. This is the ELA. And then also in math, we saw that the gap closed by 6 points. And so one of the big changes that we saw, curriculum stayed the same, but what was really changed and what was different was that it was about coaching. And so what we saw was that was one of the biggest changes. And so one of the things that we want to really point out was that the research that backs up why we believe that this data point change in coaching really is embedded in Joyce and Shower's research, which is that if you look at Joyce and Shower's research, and we know as educators, we do this a lot, is that a lot of times what we do is that we help teachers get the training, they see the skills, and that it doesn't necessarily demonstrate in the classroom. And so the Joyce and Shower's research really shows that you can put the information in front of teachers, and they can show the knowledge, that they will demonstrate the skills, but it won't necessarily translate when it's in the classroom. And so even though that'll take place, one of the best ways that you can actually get it to move from what happens in the training to what happens in the classroom is by adding the final component, which is really about coaching and adding the coaching component to it. And so in their research, what they went from is that if you just put the knowledge, the theory and discussion out there, you have translation to about 10%. But then if you add demonstration, it goes to about 30%. If you add feedback, it jumps to about 60%. But finally, if you add coaching, you get that up to about 95% of those outcomes translate back into the classroom. And so the coaching is one of the key essential places that you get back to what you want. And so one of the things that we found, and I think we all do this as educators, is we do PD days. We put it out there and we say, hey, here's the new concept that we want to see as a overall component within our school district, or here's the new what we want. But what we don't support is our teachers and how we want that to take place. And so coaching is really one of the things that we found was really essential in making sure that this comes back. Another bit of research that we know backs this up is Hattie's work. Those of you, if you haven't spent time looking at John Hattie's meta research, we really strongly believe that Hattie's research backs up what we saw, which is really his meta work around this, is really around collective teacher efficacy. And so those who have done the work know that 0.4 is really the 0.4 and above is really the zone of desired effect. So if you want more than 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, you need to be doing action that is above 0.4. And so teacher collective efficacy is what we believe that we were doing as far as bringing teachers together, talking about common goals, common outcomes, and really working towards those together. And that has an effect size of 1.6. And so we were able to do that and really work together for that. And so that was the main push that we had with the group together there in Chinle, and we were able to push and move that forward. So clearly, in what we saw in the work, it translated not only in leaders' perception of the work, but also in student outcomes for that work as far as moving that forward. So clearly, coaching mattered to do it. And so one of the things that we think is that one of the ways that we did that is making sure that we had individualized support. We also had it as far as providing instructional practice, increasing confidence for teachers, professional growth, and supporting learning for the individual students. One of the things that we like to do is we love this quote from Elena Aguilar. If anybody hasn't seen her work, we always highly encourage her work in the art of coaching. That everyone we work with knows a lot more and can do a lot more than we think. It is our job as a coach to find out what it is that what they know and care about and can do and are committed to, and then we use that information to help them move their practice. And I think that we believe that that's part of what is really coaching is all about, is helping move teachers forward in that process. And that is what can be so powerful and uplifting, is helping use our expertise in that process. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Erin, to talk about a little bit more in depth about our tiered model and what we did and how we did that.
All right, thanks, Kirk. So now we're going to take the theoretical and we're going to turn it into the concrete. And I realized that I forgot to share with you all, we have created a one-pager for you that I just threw into the chat. And in that one-pager, you're going to find a one-stop shop of all the things that we're going to share with you in this session, including the slides, links to resources, everything that you need. So with that, I'll go ahead and put that in the chat, make sure everybody can access it. All right, and we'll go ahead and get started. So this is an overall view of the tiered model and approach that we took in Chinle. And you'll notice, of course, that this tiered model looks just like MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. And it works the same way. So tier 1 is going to be everyone. Then when we look at tier 2, we're talking about, excuse me, one second. We're talking about 10 to 15% of our staff. And then when we move up to tier 3, we're talking about 5 to 10% of our staff. And so as we go up the triangle, we're really increasing in support, time, and intensity. And that's really important. Another really important piece is this cross section that you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner. So we're not ever taking away support as we move up the tiers. Rather, we're layering on support. So someone who we identify maybe needs more time and intensity at tier 2, we're not going to let go of any support that we're providing at tier 1. It's the same with MTSS, but we're just going to use this model to think about how do we support our teachers. And another piece that maybe we didn't mention in the intro is that we're all really thinking about how do we grow and retain our teachers. If we can give teachers what they need, that just right support, they're going to be happy and they're going to stay. And that is really, really important right now, and something that I think about a lot. So tier 1, that was going to, and we're going to show you this in more detail in just a second. Tier 1 is about 1 time a week, walkthroughs, and quick feedback to all teachers. Okay, so everybody gets tier 1. Then when we look at tier 2, This is ongoing and more in-depth coaching for a select caseload of teachers. We're still doing walkthroughs and giving that quick feedback, but we're spending more time with our tier 2 teachers than with just our tier 1 teachers. At tier 3, this is where we're going to start to have conversations about development plans for a select few teachers, and we're going to give you some resources around what that can look like and sound like. So this is the big picture view. All right, so now let's take a look and zoom in on walkthroughs. And what you're going to see on this slide is that we've broken it down into before, during, and after. Before you go into classrooms, it's really important as a building leadership team to sit down and talk about your big school goals, your rocks, your instructional way. There's many different ways to say it, but what are the 2 to 3 priorities that you have as a school? And what do you think it should look like and sound like for those priorities to be living in classrooms? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about look fors. That's a really important pre-work that you need to do as a building leadership team before you go into classrooms. I would even argue that doing this with teachers is really meaningful so that there's no mystery around what it is that you're looking for in classrooms and what you expect to hear and see from students and teachers. The second piece is when you're in classrooms, we recommend spending about 5 to 8 minutes in all classrooms 1 time a week. It's very important to take low inference notes and collect data, and we're going to show you what that data can look like. And how you can prepare for collecting that data with your building leadership team prior to conducting walkthroughs. I will also say, depending on the size of your school, you may want to divide this up and come up with a plan for how you're going to get to all classrooms 1 time a week. But what really, really makes it important is that after, you as a building leadership team need to sit down together and have a discussion about trends and, what you saw across classrooms, so that if, Kirk wasn't able to make it into math classrooms, I'm downloading for him what I saw when I went into math classrooms, so that he can have a comprehensive view of, what's going well across the school and where are those areas for improvement. The other piece is that you want to deliver that feedback timely, and you want it to be really clear and actionable. And when we talk about actionable, and we'll show you some examples here in just a minute, this is actionable in the sense that the teacher might even choose to implement your feedback the next class period. It can be that quick and that actionable.
And I think one thing that I just want to point out is that this is about coaching and teacher improvement. It's not about evaluation. And so this is different than Randa. And so I think as we did it instruction or introductions, I was hearing a lot about I'm a coach, I'm this. This is about how do we help support our teachers, not how do we evaluate. And so Randa, and for those of us who are all, I think we're all Colorado on this call, that's why I'm using that. That's a different kind of component. This is about supporting and continuous improvement. And so I think that's always important in clarifying that conversation, is that it may be data points to use in Randa, but it's really about how are we helping teachers with continuous improvement. And so I think that's really important for those of you who are coaches, is that this is a support piece that you're doing for all teachers so that we can help them all continuously improve, not how do we evaluate our teachers. And so I think that's a really important part in why we believe we can help teachers continuously improve and get better for all students.
Thanks so much, Kirk, for pointing that out. I appreciate that. All right, so on your one pager and also on the screen, we're going to take you through an example. So this school that we're going to go visit, they also follow Hattie's research, and they know that classroom discussion is one of those levers that they can implement across their school that is going to really help their students grow, and they are invested in it. And so they have come up with 4 look fors 2 student look-fors and 2 teacher look-fors that show that they're doing a really great job implementing classroom discussion. So students have internalized routines and are able to transition in and out of groups effectively. Students are engaged as evidenced by their conversations, eye contact, and posture. Teachers are circulating the classroom and leaning in to listen to student discussions to gather data. And finally, teachers give feedback to students on the process and on the content of their discussions that increases the quality of their communication, collaboration, and learning. So there's a lot right here in these 4 look-fors. So their one priority is classroom discussion, and these 4 look-fors can stay the same all year. It could even be used the following year if classroom discussion maintains a priority moving forward. There's a lot to talk about and think about in these 4 look-fors. Okay, so your building leadership team comes together and you've come up with your 4 look-fors and you're ready to go into classrooms. Well, not yet. Another really important part is that we had mentioned that it's really important to collect low interest notes. We really want to collect data that's going to be meaningful to having a discussion with our teachers. And it also is you being in the classroom as another eyes and ears to help teachers. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? So for class discussions, we have some examples of data that you can collect. Transition time into pairs and groups. We said on the previous slide, let's see if I can go over there. We said on the previous slide that we know we're going to be doing a good job with classroom discussion if students have internalized routines and are able to transition quickly. Well, that is evidenced by transition time. That is something that you as the coach can come in and say, hey, last week it took them 10 minutes to get in and out of their groups. And this week when I came in, they were on it. They were in groups ready to go in 2 minutes. And you can help the teacher unpack, what did you do that contributed to that success? It's really helpful as a coach to help them unpack that. You can also script portions of student conversations, track student and teacher talk time. The important piece is that your data matches your look-fors. These need to be aligned. What I expect to see and hear in the classroom should be aligned to the data that I'm collecting. Okay. All right. And Kirk also, when he was talking about our conversation today is not necessarily about being an evaluator. It's more about being a coach. There's also this spectrum that we like to talk about when we talk about coaching. If you look to the far left, if you're taking the directive stance as a coach, that means that you are solving or helping this person solve their problem by giving them direct action steps. If we go to the far right of the spectrum, it's non-directive, or another term that you might hear is facilitative. That is where you're helping that other person solve their own problem. And what I will say about this is, as a coach, it's always really helpful to get to know who you're going to be coaching so that you can kind of figure out what approach is going to work best for specific teachers. I will say, in general, veteran teachers respond better to a non-directive facilitative approach versus new teachers do tend to gravitate more towards a directive approach. However, everybody's different. And so if you're not sure, it's always also really helpful to have that conversation with your coachee to say, hey, here's this spectrum. Where do you feel like you fall on this spectrum? I, as your coach, want to meet your needs. Should I be non-directive? Should I be directive? What would you prefer? Okay. All right, and so keeping with the theme of classroom discussion, we have an example of both facilitative and directive for you. So I will pause for a second. That is also in your one-pager right here at the bottom of the first page. So take a second and go ahead and read both the facilitative and the directive. And I want you to look for, of course, the difference in the approach, but also what do you notice about how they're using data? So take a moment to read that. Okay, so whether you choose facilitative or directive, what you'll notice is this can fit on a sticky note. It's short, it's brief. You also probably picked up that we're putting data that aligns to the look-fors in either approach. In the group I observed, I noticed 2 out of the 4 students were participating in the discussion. I'm being the eyes and ears for the teacher. I noticed 2 out of the 4 kids were talking, the other 2 were not. The difference between facilitative and directive is that in facilitative, I'm saying, hey, so what are some strategies that you've used in the past to ensure that all students are talking, that there's equity of voice? Versus in directive, I'm saying, hey, why don't you try this whip around strategy? Here's what it would look like. Here's how you could implement it, right? And then in both approaches, I'm also saying student discussion is really important to us in our school. We've had a lot of PD on it, right? I'm going to be coming into your classroom and I really want to see this happening. Thank you for all the work that you're doing, right? Really simple, short, and can be implemented as early as the next class period. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at Tier 2. Again, this is about ongoing and more in-depth coaching for a select caseload of teachers. So while Kirk was just chatting with the group about Tier 1 is a sampling, Tier 2 is going to be more time and more intensity for a select group of teachers. Okay, so this probably looks pretty familiar to you all because this is the coaching cycle. It is also a learning cycle. And one of the other things that Kirk said that I wanted to lift up as well is that I think it's really important that we as coaches start to see ourselves as teachers of teachers, right? We need to think about the same best practices of learning apply in many cases to adults as they do to children. And I think this is one of those ways, right? We are going to start by, in a Tier 2 coaching cycle, really getting clear on what the goal is. Okay, so based on data, student achievement, walkthrough data, whatever data you have, you're going to identify your caseload of teachers and you're going to partner with them and be really clear and set an area of focus. Then comes the learning, right? Here's where you're going to create a plan and come alongside the teacher, right? And so that learning can take different forms. It might be you coming in to model a lesson or model a strategy. You could co-teach together. You could take the teacher to observe another teacher. You could share additional resources and professional development. The important piece here is that we've set a goal and now we're going to engage in some shared learning together. Oops. Then once you've set a goal and you've had some learning together, then you're going to observe and collect data. Did what we talk about translate to the classroom? So you're going to collect data and low inference notes aligned to the goal area that you have identified. And then you're going to meet with the teacher, share the data, talk about action steps, support them with reflection, planning, and next steps. And you'll see these arrows keep going because this cycle is meant to keep going. So as this person that you're coaching remains in that tier 2 place, you're going to go through multiple coaching cycles together. And it's going to evolve as that person grows. So your goals are going to change and the learning is going to change. Another resource we wanted to lift up from Elena Aguilar is the Mind the Gap resource. We don't have a ton of time to go through this today, but if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I've done these tier 2 coaching cycles and I can't seem to get to the just right action step to move the teacher forward, I would recommend this resource. It's fantastic. It really helps you to think through, is this a skill gap? Do I need to really help model a skill for the teacher, or is it a knowledge gap? Or is it a capacity gap? Do I need to try to help them find time to be able to work on whatever it is that we're working on? So I would highly recommend this, and it's linked in your one pager. All right, so that brings us to tier 3. So tier 3 is conversations and development plans for a select few teachers if needed. You might not have anyone that you end up putting in a tier 3 space. And so we wanted to offer to you all a different way of thinking about tier 3. Now, this is where it kind of does go from coaching land into evaluative land. And so the first thing I will say is that if you are an instructional coach and you're coaching someone and you're not technically their evaluator, this is the point where I would bring that evaluator with you so that you all can work on this together. So we define a tier 3 coaching conversation as an open dialogue that is really aimed at explaining to the staff member the demands of their role, where they have failed to meet these demands, and discussing if a performance improvement plan with continued coaching is the right step. It's us sitting down together and say, hey, we have had many cycles of tier 3 coaching conversations. We've set goals. We've learned together. I've observed and given you feedback. We've reflected, and things are moving. So now we're going to move to this tier 3 place. So we've provided for you a sample script in your one pager. You can access it there. Down at the bottom right here, sample script. And so we wanted to give you a couple of minutes to look through that sample script. This is a sample. It is not perfect by any means, but we wanted to give you something that you could modify or make your own. So go ahead and open that up and take a look. And then as you're reviewing it, you'll see we started tier 3 coaching conversation. We explain the needs of the role. We focus on the high bar of performance that we need and where that gap exists. And then we spend time with the staff member to help them reflect on how to move forward. We are going to have some time to discuss. There are 3 questions we'd like you to consider. What are you thinking now about coaching for best first instruction that you were not thinking before? What actions are you inspired to take? And what questions are you still sitting with? And before we open it up to discuss, I just want a couple of housekeeping pieces. If you're not familiar with Generation Schools Network and the work that we do, there's a slide here talking about our services, community and career connected learning, health and wellness and prevention, collaborative action and policy, and the bucket of work that we're talking about today, coaching for best first instruction, really lives within leadership, talent, and academic improvement. And then we, of course, want to invite you to our final webinar of the 24-25 school year, which is all about project-based learning. This is that time of year where it's always really great to dig into a PBL project. with kids as you finish the year strong. And so we'd love to share with you some ideas and different approaches on how to do that.